What you resist persists. This is one of the first spiritual laws that I was introduced to as a teenager. Way back I heard this, and I had a lot of resistance to it. And then it kept coming up for me. I wonder why. Because I thought, oh, come on. You have to resist that which you do not want in your life. That's just common sense. But unfortunately, common sense is not always enlightened sense. The common sense of the world is often diametrically opposed to the common sense of the soul, the common sense of the spirit, a heavenly common sense. And until we can begin, when we can begin to live our lives from the common sense of spirit, of soul, a heavenly common sense, then we will begin to experience thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. But until we begin to live our lives with the common sense of the spirits, which is diametrically opposed to the common sense of the world, which is generally an ego-driven common sense, right? Until we can begin to live from that common sense, we will experience confusion and a whole lot of unnecessary drama on the planet as we spin around the sun. And so today, let's begin to bring into our being some common sense of the spirit and live from some common sense of the soul and begin to see a transformation of our world. And we'll start with this one little idea. What you resist persists. I think the Borg said it best. Any Star Trek fans? Yeah, because there's always some metaphysical, spiritual thing going on in Star Trek. And I think the Borg said it best. The Borg, to me, were the most frightening sci-fi villains that ever... I mean, if you ever watched it, when they came on the screen, it was just like, oh, man. I can't breathe. And do you remember what their catchphrase was? Anybody?
Resistance is futile.
Yes! It's become common sense now. It became so famous. Resistance is futile. What a truth! What a powerful spiritual truth. Resistance is futile. What you resist persists. See, I believe the Borg were like evil enlightenment. They knew stuff. They did. They were the collective consciousness. All that stuff. It was so frightening. But here I have, I have the exact line that was spoken in Star Trek that made that a meme. In other words, something everybody's aware of. It was an episode called The Best of Both Worlds. And the Borg said this: I am Lukutos of Borg. Resistance is futile. Your life as it has been is over. From this time forward, you will serve us. Whoa. But it's so true. Think about it. From this day forward, your life is over. You will serve us. Because not only is what you resist persist, but what you resist, you're in service to. Whatever you give your energy to, you are serving. You are helping them along. Whatever you resist not only persists, because resistance is a high form of prayer. Prayer is anything we give our energy to, anything we give our consciousness to. And as we resist it, resistance is like trying to get a fire out by fanning it. That's exactly what it is. Resistance is futile. You become in service to the flames that you wish to get out. One of my very best friends and one of, I think, the great teachers on the planet, many of you know Alan Cohen, he told me one time I was just about to start a retreat with him. And at the beginning of that retreat, we were talking, and he said, oh, Barry, I got to tell you what happened a couple months ago. I wrote a letter, he said, I wrote a letter to the people and to the organization that I was going to do this conference retreat with. And he said he wrote out everything he wished to create, his vision for that retreat, on this piece of paper. And it was, I wish to see this and create this and da-da-da. But one section of it was in the negative. It was what I don't want. In other words, what he was in resistance to in one spot. And it said this, and I quote, he was speaking to the music of the event. And part of it, he was trying to be funny. And it said this, and I quote, it said this: any musician who plays Michael Row Your Boat Ashore or Kumbaya will be plummeted with Peter, Paul, and Mary records. Do not play Michael Row Your Boat Ashore or Kumbaya. So So he arrives at the event. He's sitting in the front row. The musician gets up, picks up his guitar, and he starts going, Michael, row your boat ashore, hallelujah. And Alan's sitting there going, oh my hell! How did this happen? And then the musician ended the event with a rousing version of Kumbaya, my Lord, Kumbaya. And I was just going, oh man, how could this happen? Well, you resist, persist. But see, here's the thing. I couldn't resist. So during the retreat, During the retreat the next day, I got all the group, there's like 50 of us, to get in a big circle, got him in the middle, and we all sang, Kumbaya, my Lord. And then we picked him up and cradled him, Kumbaya, Kumbaya, my Lord. And then the next morning, because we were right next to each other and the wall was like paper mache, I could hear everything in his room. So I heard him in the shower the next morning, Kumbaya. And so later I talked to him and he said, I can't get it out of my head, man. Once you resist, persist. But the good thing for Alan is, Kumbaya is not such a bad thing to be in resistance to. It isn't. Come by here, Lord. In other words, awaken that truth within me. Come by here, awaken that truth within me. Not a bad thing to be in service to. Now there are 3 networks through which resistance becomes persistence in our life. 3 networks. Now we don't know the details of how this ended up happening with this musician. But here are the 3 possibilities and the 3 networks through which resistance creates persistence. Number 1, resistance is a high form of prayer. You're putting a lot of energy on what you resist. And so it sends that energy out. And in that way, as he was writing that letter, the musician, the universe could have just got the message, you know. Number 2, maybe the musician saw the page. We don't know we don't know these details. But maybe he saw the page, he read, he looked at the paper, but you see the subconscious mind and spirit, by the way, are not concerned with sort of the negative surrounding. I always say the subconscious mind and spirit are only concerned with the subject matter. That which is the subject which is to be turned into matter from the ethers. And so he read that thing and he saw the subject matter. His subconscious mind only could remember the subject which is to be turned into matter. And so he manifested, Michael, row your boat ashore. So it comes true. Number 3, this is the 3rd way that this could have been manifested. The musician could have read that letter and been in a real state in that time of his life, could have been in a real sort of ego-centered state, in an angry state of being. Whenever we resist anger, what do we get? Anger. And when we're angry, we see it everywhere. We see it everywhere. So he could have read that and said, you know what, I am so sick of these gurus telling me what to play. I'm just going to play it because I can't, you see? And that's how the ego runs the world. When we come at things with anger and resistance and all that, we get it right back. We resist anger, we're going to get it right back. So these are the 3 networks through which resistance creates persistence. But as we create a new experience of earth by taking the common sense of living from the common sense of the soul of heaven and create a new world, we begin to choose without choosing sides. So we make a choice without choosing sides. We make a stand without making anyone wrong. There's a subtle difference. You see, right and wrong do not exist from the perspective of spirit. This is common sense from the spiritual perspective. Right and wrong don't exist. And so, in the spiritual perspective, all things work together for good. Let's say it together. All things work together for good. This is a profound spiritual truth. And so as we begin to see things from this perspective, it changes everything. When we choose without pointing the finger, when we make a stand without making somebody wrong, we encourage this flow of all things working together for good. When we resist, we're actually like a dam or a cork getting in the way of the flow of spirit, working together for good. This is why Jesus said over and over and over again, resist not evil. Resist not evil. Resist not. He was just basically saying in the most profound way you could think of, just stop resisting. Stop resisting. You're feeding it. It's becoming, you're making it happen. You're giving it, you're fanning the flames. We become, and in the end we sort of, we begin to become that which we resist. Ultimately, what we're talking about today is creating a state of mind in our being that lives at peace. As we let go of resistance, we stay connected to the common sense of heaven, that all things work together for good. And we stop resisting. We begin to connect and live in a state of peace. I changed my mind. The whole thing shifted for me, and all of a sudden I saw everything different. And that, right there, is the miracle. It is the only miracle we should be concerned with. The transformation of human consciousness changes everything. It's the miracle. Anything that happens outside of us is secondary to the transformation of consciousness and how we perceive things. Because as soon as we change our perception, the whole universe changes with us. Everything changes. Walking on water and parting the Red Sea is secondary to changing your mind, changing how you see things.